As a constitutional law attorney, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis.
Regarding Israel, while House Republicans are leading on appropriations, we're also leading the charge to support our cherished friend. And last week, in one of my first acts as Speaker, we passed a resolution reaffirming our commitment to Israel in its moment of peril. And now, as Israel begins the next phase of its war, it's been kind of disturbing to us. I've heard Democrats suggest that there needs to be a ceasefire. Let us be clear. We've been very clear about this. There was a ceasefire. It was before October 7th, and Hamas broke it. And Israelis suffered unspeakable acts of evil, as you've heard even recounted here this morning. Israel doesn't need a ceasefire. It needs its allies to cease with the politics and deliver support now. And that's what we're doing. House Republicans plan to do that. We're going to do it in short order, and it provides Israel the aid it needs to defend itself, free its hostages, and eradicate Hamas, which is a mission that must be accomplished.
With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you.
That was Speaker Mike Johnson about the resolution that the House passed, and also ahead of the U.S. House of Representatives passing an aid package that would send $14 million, a little over, to Israel, and would also take that same amount of money out of funding that was allocated to the IRS, so that they are not just writing a blank check. We had Representative Chip Roy on last week talking about that, which makes a lot of sense, that if Congress wants to spend money on something new, they should take it from something else that maybe they shouldn't be spending money on. So we are still following the Israel, and hopefully the United States Senate, and especially Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, will get on board. He has apparently said that he opposes that aid package allocation because it doesn't also include more aid to Ukraine. But the single issue aid packages seemed like a very good idea to me. But let's get Auron McIntyre's take. He is a host and writer at Blaze TV, and we've had him on quite frequently for his views. And Auron, thanks so much for joining. And, I think that this is a great package, one, because we should be supporting Israel, but also, second, because it is single issue. The representatives and also then the U.S. Senate doesn't have to vote on aid to both Israel and Ukraine, but can separate that. But especially because it is reallocating funding. And frankly, I don't see why we need to be spending that much money on the IRS anyway. But what is your take?
Well, I agree that isolating the package is definitely an improvement in general. And of course, we should not be expanding the IRS at all. It is a weaponized agency directly pointed at conservatives, at Republicans, at opponents of the Biden administration. We should just be stripping as much funding in general from them as possible. So those are positive aspects, but I don't think that we should be sending it to Israel or Ukraine or any other foreign country. People like Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene have made this point. Americans are struggling. There's a housing crisis. There's an open border. Inflation is rampant and out of control. I understand the idea here is that we're going to be taking money out of the IRS, so we're not net spending additional, but that was already way more money than we should be spending. We should be keeping that money at home. We should be taking care of Americans. Israel suffered a terrible loss, and I hope that they are able to defend themselves and do what they need to do and take care of that. But they are a modern country perfectly capable of defending themselves against terrorists.
And, you're not the only person, interestingly, and then the others that you suggested and referenced, Marjorie Taylor Greene, among others, that are actually upset about Israel being the first priority for Speaker Mike Johnson. Tucker Carlson was actually very upset, and I want to get your reaction to this clip and discuss. This is cut 3.
But when the Speaker of the House, who I know is a nice guy from your state, the new Speaker of the House comes in, and the first thing he does is issue a statement on behalf of a foreign country. That's the most important thing. I'm not even against the statement, but right. I'm just saying, what bigger statement does that make?
That's him, Mikey Johnson?
Yeah. And
he's the speaker?
He is. And,
praise God.
But he's a nice guy, and I'm not against him, but I'm just saying, if you think the welfare of another country is the most important thing for you as one of the leaders of our country, third in line to the presidency, you have lost the thread, son, because it's not. Nothing is more important for the leaders of our country than our country and how its 350 million people are doing. So I was enraged by that. And people are like, oh, are you for Hamas? Of course I'm not for Hamas at all. I'm for America, actually. I shouldn't even have to answer that question. Yeah. Are you for Israel or Hamas? I mean, obviously I'm for Israel over Hamas, but that's irrelevant. I'm for America. And no one even asked that.
And that was Tucker Carlson on one of the podcasts. I don't actually have the name of what the clip was from, but he was obviously in a conversation with another show host. And Auron, I think that a lot of people are criticizing this. I personally understand, and it's my opinion that while this, of course, America first should be the priority of the U.S. government. In the moment that Speaker Johnson took the speakership, this was an immediate necessity, and he couldn't help the timing of the issues with Israel. So I don't think that this suggests that the only priority is Israel, or that the U.S. Congress isn't focusing under his leadership on priorities for America. But don't you think that the timing here is something that that needs to be at least taken into consideration?
Sure, absolutely. But I do think that there's an issue of do something disease. And this is something that Republicans should know better about. Conservatives should know better about. Yes, I understand the notion of global leadership. Yes, I understand the notion that America is standing by an ally in theory. But in practice, you're making a symbolic gesture. Again, Israel is perfectly capable of funding its own defense. America is currently having serious crises in multiple areas, and this shows the American people, unfortunately, that the most important thing that the new speaker can do is signal in support symbolically of another nation rather than immediately taking action on issues that matter to them. Again, as Tucker said, what Hamas did is horrific. Israel has every right to respond. I wish them well in that. They are well within their sovereign right as a nation to defend themselves and in the right to do so. But there is simply no reason that American funds need to be dedicated to this, and there's no reason that the Republicans, the right conservatives, should be signaling their priority as a foreign country. If you say American first, you got to mean it, and that means thinking about the people of the United States and committing their tax dollars to their well-being as your first priority. Once you've cleaned up your house, maybe you can go put out the fire in your next-door neighbor's house, but your house is on fire, and you got to care about that.
So then what should have been the priorities if we are talking about America first and cleaning? I mean, obviously there are issues in the economy and so many other things. So in your view, what should have been the first priorities for the speaker to advance legislation. I mean, with a very slim Republican majority that is being held together, I think, pretty delicately.
Well, I mean, the political reality is this bill is dead on arrival either way, right? Chuck Schumer's already said that this bill is not going to see a pair in the Senate. Mitch McConnell wants there to be a Ukrainian writer on this as well. So there's no way that the bill that was passed here is going to make a difference either way. So it is purely symbolic. If you're going to pass a purely symbolic bill, at least pass one that's just 100% border security or 100% defunding of the IRS. Or something similar. If we're just passing symbolic legislation anyway, if we know this legislation is done on arrival anyway, make it a priority for Americans' border security. Make sure that you're, funding a wall, even if you know that the Senate's not going to end up passing it. Make those actions known so that your base knows you care about them.
I'm speaking with Auron McIntyre, who's a host and columnist at The Blaze Media. And, there are a lot of symbolic efforts just because of the division between Democrats and Republicans. But doesn't this legislation that was advanced out of the House, doesn't this at least then put the Senate in a difficult position for not supporting Israel if they vote it down, and then it's not at least the fault of the House Republicans for not advancing that aid package. I mean, this is the type of thing that I think conservatives and Republicans like me and many others were calling for from the leadership of Kevin McCarthy, to not cave on things like putting together a multi-pronged spending package that would give another rider or aid to Ukraine or something like that. And so for Speaker Johnson, doesn't this at least indicate that he's willing to advance conservative priorities?
Well, I will say this. The interesting thing that this puts the ball in the court for many on the left, for Democrats, is they're split currently inside that party on whether or not to support Israel. Obviously, I think the woke wing of the Democratic Party is very pro-Palestine. There are still many inside of the left who kind of have a residual allegiance to Israel or the bipartisan interest in supporting Israel. But there's a leftist civil war kind of going on right now as the liberationist rhetoric, the decolonization rhetoric that has become very powerful on the left has taken over much of that party. And so I will say the one positive thing of this is it does put that ball in the court of many who then have to make visible votes, and that's a possible wedge on the left. Again, I don't think this should have been the first priority. I don't think overall this is the right move. However, it is interesting to exacerbate that split on the left and see where it takes things, because that is a very powerful and visible division that is now forming on the left and puts them in a very tight spot.
Yeah, and especially heading into the 2020 elections, which critical seats in the U.S. House and the Senate in terms of overall Republican versus Democrat control are up in 2024. A lot of the focus, of course, is obviously on the presidential election in a presidential election year, but we also have to focus on the composition of the House and the Senate. And, it's interesting in the broader scale as well. And in just the last 2 minutes I have with you, Auron McIntyre, and by the way, he mentioned the decolonization rhetoric. And Auron and I did a really great podcast episode on my Salem Media podcast. You can find that at thejennaellisshow.com. This was a couple of weeks ago to talk about what that term actually means as the left is using it, how you can better understand it. And then Auron actually did his own episode at The Blaze, which is why I invited him on my show to further discuss. And that show is also on The Blaze that talks about decolonization if you're interested in delving into that further. But I want to ask you in just the last 2 minutes I have with you here as well. So speaking of the division on the left, there's so much rhetoric in terms of what the squad and members like Rashida Tlaib are suggesting in terms of not just support for pro-Palestine, but also for Hamas, and how Democrats in her own home state of Michigan are pushing back against that. Do you see that becoming a divisive issue heading into 2024 for Democrats in the House and Senate?
Like I said, yeah, I think it really is going to be a fascinating issue to watch. Usually the left's vanguard is been kept in check by kind of establishment interests. And so while you do have people like the squad kind of pushing certain woke issues, pushing kind of again that corner of critical race theory, decolonization, that kind of nexus of intersectional theory, they have been more or less held in check by people like Nancy Pelosi. It feels like they are feeling their oats. They're feeling their power. They're feeling that they have the ability to guide the conversation and that they don't kind of have to pay heed to these restrictions anymore. And it's going to be really fascinating to see whether they pay a cost for this in the long term or whether this is something the vanguard can get out ahead of and actually win against the establishment on. One thing we've seen is that the left is in a pretty serious purity spiral. They don't seem to have a way of stopping it. And the more radical edges of the left have been winning a lot of these conversations, a lot of these contests. And so if they can break this one, if they can really push, kind of a pro-Palestine message and make that a central movement issue within the left, that is a fascinating and scary development that would occur.
It is really well said. And in the midst of all this, Kamala Harris's stepdaughter is raising millions for Palestine. According to TownHall, Kamala Harris's stepdaughter, Ella Emhoff, has reportedly raised nearly $8 million for the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. And there's been no comment from either Kamala Harris or Ella's father, Doug Emhoff, who, of course, is Kamala Harris's husband. So we'll continue to monitor all this and be right back with more.
America is at a tipping point. It's Jenna Ellis here to tell you about a new movie that you have to see. My good friend Dinesh D'Souza's movie, Police State, exposes the government's relentless persecution of the conservative movement. The America we know and love is becoming more and more like a police state every day. The FBI has turned its eyes away from the real dangers in the world to target what they call domestic terrorists, with a totalitarian agenda that's treating conservative Americans like criminals. They're targeting their political opponents, using mass surveillance and censorship, indoctrinating our children, and threatening families with military-style raids on our homes, threatening people like you and me who speak our minds and stand up for freedom of speech, freedom of religion, our God-given American liberties. This is directed by Dinesh D'Souza, Debbie D'Souza, and Bruce Schooley. Police State sounds the alarm. If you demand your freedom, they're coming after you. So how did we get here? And how do we turn the tide of this tyrannical government's agenda? Well, you have to see this movie, Police State. Buy it or stream it now at policestatefilm.net. That's policestatefilm.net.
And the Democrats are still attempting to just override the entire U.S. Constitution. And there's a great piece in TownHall by our friend Katie Pavlich, who writes, Republicans expose Democrats' quote-unquote ethics scheme to remake the Supreme Court. Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee further exposed a scheme by Democrats to remake the Supreme Court during a hearing on Capitol Hill Thursday. Republicans highlighted relentless attacks on conservative justices by Democrat senators and leftist activists, showing new ethics reform is really an underhanded way for liberals to control decision-making. So Senator Tom Cotton had some very spicy words on this, and this is cut one.
It's not, as Senator Whitehouse says, an effort to expose wrongdoing at the Supreme Court. It's an effort to delegitimize the Supreme Court because you don't like the way they rule. When you lose at the ballot box for years, you tried to achieve in courts what you couldn't achieve through democratic elections and legislatures. You thought the Supreme Court was your own special province. And then, when there became a center-right majority on the Supreme Court, you began to attack its very foundations. This is not some secret. It's wide out in the open. Chuck Schumer has gone to the steps of the Supreme Court and threatened justices by name that they wouldn't know what hit them if they ruled in ways that the Democratic Party didn't like. In May of 2022, the unprecedented action of leaking the Supreme Court decision in the Dobbs case occurred, unleashing left-wing street militias outside of justices' homes.
So that was Senator Tom Cotton in the Senate Judiciary Committee. And Ranking Member Chuck Grassley also weighed in by tweeting, "Attention Judiciary Committee Democrats, the Supreme Court is an independent branch of government, not a political punching bag." He also tweeted out, "The second day Judiciary Committee has on the agenda partisan subpoenas to go after Supreme Court justices. It's all part of a campaign by the left to harass and intimidate the Supreme Court because they don't like some of its recent decisions." And this comes in the wake of Senator Dick Durbin, who unveiled a motion he tweeted to issue subpoenas to Harlan Crow, Leonard Leo, and Robin Arkley II. You'll note that Leonard Leo was one of the chief architects or strategists behind Trump's 3 nominees. He is the head of the Federalist Society and was helpful in terms of that very first list during the 2016 campaign when President Trump was the first then candidate to actually put out a list of his potential nominees and pledge to choose from that list. And so Dick Durbin said that this kickstarts the debate and next steps to a full committee vote as soon as next week. So this resolution is to subpoena them and for other documents and records from those entities and individuals pertinent to the subject matter described in these letters. So this, in my view, is Tom Cotton is absolutely right that this is just the latest attack by Democrats to try to manipulate the Supreme Court, because guess what? It's actually conservative now. And remember, before 2016 and before President Trump's 3 appointees, and we should all be thanking God that the 3 seats that became available went to a president who appointed conservative originalists. But prior to that, the Democrats were suggesting that the Supreme Court is the beacon of truth. It was super precedent. You can never question the Supreme Court. Otherwise you're against democracy and, all of this type of rhetoric. And then suddenly, shockingly, when the Supreme Court doesn't rule in their favor, then Democrats just want to suggest now that the Supreme Court as an institution needs to completely they have all of these different measures to expand the Supreme Court, to add seats. They want to reinvent some of the judiciary acts in order to expand the Supreme Court. They will do literally anything on the left to try to manipulate the rules to get their way. And we've seen that over and over and over again. And I would submit that when you are a party or a political perspective that says that we just want to force our view by any method possible, that's actually antithetical to our constitutional republic. That isn't going along with originalism. Originalism, in the sense that conservatives understand it, means that we don't get our way all the time. Sometimes people get elected that we don't like, or sometimes the majority does things that we don't prefer. And we have a rule book in the U.S. Constitution that will hold to a limited principle of government and limited actions that our government can promulgate. But within what the government can do, the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary, what they can do, then what they prefer to do, sometimes we may not agree with. And this is why elections matter. And this is especially why the judiciary matters 100%, because if we don't get a judicial branch that is holding these other 2 branches accountable, then we get into legislating from the bench and we get these warped, manipulated opinions that do things like find a so-called right to abortion in the U.S. Constitution that's totally against our entire Constitution and our legislative process, where 30-plus states prior and after Roe v. Wade had actually codified into their legislation and these protections for unborn children. And so we have to make sure that the left is not simply trying to manipulate their own view. I mean, it's the same thing with same-sex marriage, where these states that had as part of their state constitutional structure saying that the state would only recognize a union between one man and one woman, And then the Supreme Court goes off and Obergefell just says, like a Hallmark card, well, love is love. And, we think that there should be a right to same-sex marriage. Well, that's nothing within the scope of the judiciary, but the Democrats were totally fine with that. Nobody was talking about expanding the Supreme Court when the leftist court was giving them everything they wanted. It's only when we have an originalist majority. So this is why elections matter, and this is why we as values voters need to not be just party focused. This isn't a Democrat versus Republican thing. This is a left versus right, and it's a conservative, originalist, protecting the Constitution value that we have to go against these manipulations of our law, our Constitution, and our branches of government and our agents to make sure that we secure freedom and we hold all of these government officers and agents accountable to stay within the margins of the U.S. Constitution. So that is the town hall piece that is titled Republicans Expose Democrats' quote-unquote ethics scheme to remake the Supreme Court. There's also a suggestion out there by the left that the Supreme Court, which is not held currently to the Code of Judicial Ethics that every other inferior court is held to in terms of conduct, that just because they don't like Justice Thomas, for example, and they don't like that he has a wife who in her private citizen capacity can go and advocate for political views, just because they don't like that, they want to reshape ethics to force conservatives to go along with their beliefs. And while I think it's a good thing to have an overall ethics code, obviously it can be manipulated. And these are things that we need to care about and we need to be talking to our senators about. So I would encourage all of you to contact your senator, and especially Senator Tom Cotton, if you agree with his remarks and originalism, and tell him to continue to fight the good fight and to continue with originalism.
With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to your to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you. My friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help you get the best night's sleep of your life. He didn't stop at the pillow. Mike also created the Giza Dream bed sheets. I have them. I love them. These sheets look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep, which is crucial for our overall health. Mike found the world's best cotton called Giza. It's ultra soft and breathable, but extremely durable. Mike's latest deal is the sale of the year. For a limited time, you will receive 50% off the Giza Dream Sheets marketing prices down as low as $29.98, depending on the size. So go to mypillow.com and click on the radio podcast square and use promo code Jenna, Jenna. There, you'll find not only this amazing offer, but also deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the MyPillow 2.0 mattress topper, MyPillow kitchen towel sets, and so much more. I have all of this. I love it. Everything from MyPillow and also mystore.com, you can use promo code Jenna. So go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Jenna, and also mystore.com. And remember, use the promo code Jenna.